on YouTube. It's your guy Sports Live, broadcasting live today, March 24th, 2025. Today we're gonna start something a little different. First, we're going to do the NCAA Division I Men's Hockey National Tournament. In this tournament, we'll feature 16 teams vying for a chance at the College National Championship for men's hockey. This hockey tournament, like I said, only has 16 teams. You have 4 regionals, which is going to be the Allentown Regionals, the Fargo Regionals, the Manchester Regional, and the Toledo Regional. In this tournament, the regionals will take place March 27th through 30th. The semifinals, or what would be commonly called the Final Four, will be taking place on April 10th. In hockey, when you get to the Final Four, it's called the Frozen Four. That's just how they do things. And then the national championship game will be April 12th of 2025. So we're going to look right now at who is playing in the first round, and then we'll go from that. Can y'all hear me out there in YouTube land? Anyway, you have Boston College versus Bentley, Providence versus Denver, Western Michigan versus Minnesota State, Minnesota versus Massachusetts, Maine versus Penn State, UConn versus Quinnipiac, Michigan State versus Cornell, Boston University versus Ohio State. Those are the teams that are currently in the vying for the national championship for college men's hockey. Yes, there are 2 Boston colleges that are in this pick. One is Boston College and one is Boston University, and they are 2 separate colleges. So without further ado, what we'll do is, it does not matter if you know anything about these teams or not, but what we're going to do is we're going to make a pick on this national tournament for men's hockey and see if we can pick who will make it to the national championship game and win it. So the first game we have is going to be Boston College or Bentley. Boston College or Bentley. Who do you have in YouTube land? Okay, I have 2 votes for Boston College. Does anybody else wish to vote? All right, nobody else votes. Boston College it is. Next game we're going to look at is Providence or Denver. Providence or Denver. Who do you have in YouTube land? I have 1 vote for Providence, 1 vote for Denver. Anybody else wish to cast a vote today? In this instance, since nobody else has cast a vote, we have a tie between Providence and Denver. In this situation, with me being the one that breaks the tie, I can either choose to keep my vote the same, or I could change my vote. In this circumstance, I originally voted for Denver, but in this situation, I'm going to go Providence and change my vote. So Providence is who we will have. Next game is Western Michigan or Minnesota State. Who do we have winning this game between Western Michigan and Minnesota State? Western Michigan or Minnesota State? All right, I have 2 votes for Minnesota State. All right, so we'll go Minnesota State on that one. Next one we have is Minnesota or Massachusetts. Minnesota or Massachusetts, and Minnesota State are 2 separate colleges. So who do we have? Okay, we have Minnesota in that one. No other votes, so Minnesota it is. Next one is Maine or Penn State. Okay, I have 2 votes for Penn State, so we're going to go Penn State. All right, the next game we have is UConn or Quinnipiac. Okay, I have 2 votes for UConn. Nobody else is voting, so we go UConn. Next game we have is Michigan State or Cornell. I have 2 votes for Cornell, and nobody else is voting, so we'll go Cornell. Next game we have is Boston University or Ohio State. Okay, I have 2 votes for Ohio State. That's who we're going to go with. Nobody else is voting, so we'll move on from that. Okay, so the next game is Boston College or Providence. Okay, I have Boston College. All right, next, and I have 2 votes for that, so nobody else is voting. I have, next game is Minnesota State or Minnesota. Okay, I have 1 vote for Minnesota State. I have 2 votes for Minnesota State. And since nobody else is voting, that's who we're going to have for that. Next game we have is Penn State versus UConn. Penn State or UConn? All right, I have 2 votes for Penn State. That's who we're going to go with unless somebody else has a vote. Next game we have is Cornell or Ohio State. Cornell or Ohio State? I know this one's a tough one. Cornell or Ohio State? Okay, it looks like I got 2 votes for Ohio State. We'll go Ohio State. All right, we're now in the Frozen Four, or the Final Four, or the Fab Four, whatever four they wish to call it. Next game we're looking at, this is men's hockey we are talking about at the moment. We have Boston College or Minnesota State. Who do we have? Boston College or Minnesota State? I have 2 votes for Minnesota State. 1 vote for Boston College. Anybody else? All right, Minnesota State it is. Next game we have will be Penn State or Ohio State. Penn State or Ohio State? I have 2 votes for Ohio State. Anybody else wish to vote? All right, Ohio State it is. Now, for the national championship for men's hockey, who do we have, Minnesota or Ohio State? Minnesota or Ohio State for the national championship in men's hockey? Minnesota or Ohio State? Okay, I have 2 votes for Ohio State. Nobody else has voted, so we're going to go Ohio State. Just a quick review before moving on to our next topic of this live stream. We just covered the men's NCAA Division I men's hockey national tournament. There are 16 teams in this tournament. In the Boston College versus Bentley, we went Boston College. In the Providence versus Denver game, we went Providence. In the Western Michigan game versus Minnesota State, we went Minnesota State. In the Minnesota versus Massachusetts game, we went Minnesota. In the Maine versus Penn State game, we went Penn State. In the Yukon versus Quinnipiac, we went Yukon. For the Michigan State Cornell game, we went Cornell. For the Boston University versus Ohio State, we went Ohio State. In the Cornell-Ohio State game, we went Ohio State. In the Penn State versus UConn game, we went Penn State. In the Minnesota State versus Minnesota, we went Minnesota. In the Boston College game versus Providence, we went Boston College. In the Boston College game versus Minnesota State, we went with Minnesota State. In the Penn State-Ohio State game, we went Ohio State. And then the Minnesota State versus Ohio State, we have Ohio State winning the national championship in men's hockey. All right, the next topic we're going to talk about today is Major League Baseball, and this is where we will be spending most of the time doing our live streams on Mondays from here on out. In Major League Baseball, there are 30 teams within the Major League Baseball, and in Major League Baseball, it is divided in two different categories as American League and National League. Within those leagues, they have it separated by three divisions: East, Central, and West. The teams for the American League East are as follows: Baltimore Orioles, the Boston Red Sox, the New York Yankees, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Toronto Blue Jays. In the AL Central, you have Chicago White Sox, you have the Cleveland Guardians, the Detroit Tigers, the Kansas City Royals, and the Minnesota Twins. In the AL West, you have the Houston Astros, the Los Angeles Angels, the Oakland Athletics, the Seattle Mariners, and the Texas Rangers. In the National League, in the National League East, you have the Atlanta Braves, you have the Miami Marlins, the New York Mets, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Washington Nationals. In the National League Central Division, you have the Chicago Cubs, the Cincinnati Reds, the Milwaukee Brewers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the St. Louis Cardinals. And in the National League West, we have the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Colorado Rockies, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the San Diego Padres, and the San Francisco Giants. When we do these live streams, the only thing we'll be doing that's unique is unless a team has more than one team within the city, we'll just go by whatever the state name is or the first name of their team. If a team has more than one team, say like the New York Yankees, the New York Mets, the Chicago Cubs, or the Chicago White Sox, or the Los Angeles Dodgers, or the Los Angeles Angels, when we refer to these games, it will be specific to that. Otherwise, it'll just be the first name of the team that we'll go by when we're making picks. The main part of the live stream, which will take place once a week on Mondays, we are going to look at Major League Baseball games going on Saturday and Sunday each week during Major League Baseball season. And today is the first day of us doing that, and we will be doing this regularly every week through at least the end of August. After the end of August, we'll see where we are. Each week, we're going to I'm going to tell you who is playing, and after I tell you who's playing on said day, we're then going to go back through, and then we're going to make a pick, just like we did with the hockey thing. And it does not matter if you know anything about the teams or not. We're going to try and see how well we can guess and figure out how well we can do just by making random picks on who we think is going to win. And just because the team wins one day, don't necessarily think that they'll win every day. They will not win every game. In Major League Baseball during the regular season, they have 162 games, so there are teams that will lose some games. There'll be games that are won more than not, and there'll be some teams that lose more than they should. Well, anyway, each week before we start the next week in regard to who is playing that next weekend, I will go over the number of games that we had, how many we got right, and how many we got wrong. And I will keep a running total when we finish the last week of August. I'll keep a running tab on how many games we covered, how many games we got right, and how many games we got wrong. And we're just going to do it just for fun. So before we make our picks, let's just go ahead and tell you who is playing on Saturday and Sunday. We'll start with Saturday games. And Saturday, the games are March 29th of 2025. You have Milwaukee versus the New York Yankees. You have the Los Angeles Angels versus Chicago White Sox. You have Minnesota versus St. Louis. You have Baltimore versus Toronto. Philadelphia versus Washington. Colorado versus Tampa Bay. Pittsburgh versus Miami. San Francisco versus Cincinnati. Cleveland versus Kansas City. Boston versus Texas. New York Mets versus Houston. Let's see. You have Atlanta versus San Diego. The Chicago Cubs versus Arizona. Detroit versus Los Angeles Dodgers. And Oakland versus Seattle. Those are the games for Saturday, March 29th. On March 30th, the games are as follows. Milwaukee versus the New York Yankees. Philadelphia versus Washington, Baltimore versus Toronto, Colorado versus Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh versus Miami, San Francisco versus Cincinnati, Los Angeles Angels versus the Chicago White Sox, Cleveland versus Kansas City, Minnesota versus St. Louis. Sorry, took me a minute to read that. Boston versus Texas, Chicago Cubs versus Arizona, Oakland versus Seattle, and Atlanta versus San Diego. Now that we know who is playing on those said days, let's now make our picks on who we think will win the game. And again, does not matter if you know anything about these teams or not. We're just going to do a random guess on who we think will win these games. So, with that being said, first we'll deal with the games on March 29th. Milwaukee or the New York Yankees? Who do we have winning that one? Milwaukee or the New York Yankees? Anybody wish to cast a vote? Okay, I have one vote for Milwaukee and I have one vote for New York. I have two votes for New York Yankees. So, does anybody else have any other votes they wish to cast? All right, so the New York Yankees, 2 votes to the Milwaukee, 1 vote. So we have the New York Yankees winning that game this weekend. Next game that we're going to make a pick on who we think is going to win, the Los Angeles Angels or the Chicago White Sox. I don't know what the pitching matchup will be on that. They have not released those yet. The games are not until Saturday and Sunday, and they generally do not release the pitching matchup until the very day of, and we're doing this a few days before. So I honestly do not know. I know that opening day is Thursday, but we're starting to do this on Saturday and Sunday, so I do not have the pitching matchup. And in most of these live streams, I won't have the pitching matchup on that very day, so thank you for the question, though, but it is a worthwhile question. I'll see if in the future I can find that for that said game. Okay, so I have 1 vote for Chicago in regard to picking for who we're going to pick for the Chicago White Sox or Milwaukee. Or I'm sorry, Los Angeles Angels versus the Chicago White Sox. Sorry. I have 2 votes for Chicago, and as of right now, that's who we're going to go with. All right, the next game we have is Minnesota versus St. Louis. Minnesota or St. Louis, who do we have winning the Major League Baseball game between those two? Again, Greg, thank you again for joining me today, and JW, thank you also for joining me, and everybody else that's come and gone in the chat, thank you for joining me. For those that's just coming in, we are making picks on who we think is going to win Major League Baseball games based on the day they play each other and stuff. And so I have 3 votes for Minnesota over St. Louis. So Minnesota is who we will go with. All right, next game we have is going to be Baltimore versus Toronto. Baltimore or Toronto, who do we have winning the game? Baltimore or Toronto? Okay, I have 1 vote for Baltimore. This is a tough one for me. I got 2 votes for Baltimore. Anybody else wish to cast a vote in the Baltimore versus Toronto game? All right, no other votes. So I have 1 vote for Toronto. Okay. So we have 2 votes for Baltimore and 1 vote for Toronto. And unless we have other votes come in, Baltimore will have it 2 votes to 1. That's who we're going to go with who we'll have winning this game this week. All right, the next game we have is Philadelphia versus Washington. Philadelphia or Washington? Who do we have to win that game? I'm curious as to what y'all will think on that one. So, Philadelphia or Washington? Okay, I have one vote for Philadelphia. I have two votes for Philadelphia. I have three votes for Philadelphia. So, with an overwhelming 3 votes to none, we are going to have Philadelphia to win the game over Washington. At least for March 29th, anyway. Next game we have will be Colorado or Tampa. Colorado versus Tampa, as you can kind of see in my notes here. Colorado or Tampa? Who do we have winning that game? In reference to the notes, the teams that you see that are underlined are the teams that we're going with on the games that we have got going on. So I have one vote for Tampa. I have 3 votes for Tampa over Colorado, so we will go Tampa. All right, next game is Pittsburgh or Miami. Pittsburgh versus Miami. Who do we have? What say y'all in YouTube land? Pittsburgh or Miami? I have one vote for Pittsburgh. I have 2 votes for Pittsburgh. I have one vote for Miami, mine. So in that situation, Pittsburgh has 2 votes to my one vote with Miami. And in this situation, majority wins. So we will have Pittsburgh defeating Miami on that game. Next game we have will be San Francisco or Cincinnati. San Francisco or Cincinnati, who do we have winning that one? What say y'all in YouTube land? All right, I have one vote for Cincinnati over San Francisco. I have 2 votes for Cincinnati, and I have one vote for San Francisco. Again, there is a tie in that situation. There is not a tie. I'm sorry. We have 2 votes for Cincinnati and one vote for San Francisco. So in that situation, majority rules on that, and so we will have Cincinnati defeating San Francisco. All right. Next game we have is Cleveland or Kansas City. Cleveland or Kansas City? Who do we have? Cleveland or Kansas City? What say y'all in YouTube land? I'm curious to see how y'all wish to vote on that one. Okay, I have one vote for Kansas City over Cleveland. Okay, cool. I appreciate you checking in, Greg. Like I said, we'll be doing these live streams once a week on Mondays regarding Major League Baseball, so feel free to join in at any time, and I do appreciate you very much. All right, and I've got 2 votes for Kansas City. I have 3 votes for Kansas City. Have a good day, Greg, and thank you again for casting your votes. It is appreciated. So we're going to go Kansas City in this game since we have 3 votes to 0. All right, the next game we have will be Boston or Texas. Boston or Texas. Who do we have in winning this game? Boston or Texas? I have 2 votes for Texas. Anybody else wish to cast a vote? All right, since nobody else is casting a vote, we will go Texas in that game against Boston. Next game for March 29th, we have the New York Mets versus Houston. The New York Mets or Houston? Who do we have winning that one? New York Mets or Houston? I have 2 votes for Houston, so we're going to go Houston in that one since nobody else has voted yet. All right, the next game we have for March 29th will be Atlanta versus San Diego. Atlanta or San Diego? Atlanta, I've got 2 votes for Atlanta, none for San Diego, so we're going to go Atlanta. Next game we have will be the Chicago Cubs versus Arizona. The Chicago Cubs or Arizona? Who do we have winning this game for Saturday, March 29th? Chicago Cubs or Arizona? Okay, I have 2 votes for Arizona over Chicago, so we will go with that. Next game we have for March 29th will be Detroit versus Los Angeles Dodgers. Detroit or the Los Angeles Dodgers? Who do we have winning that one? Okay, I have 1 vote for Detroit. I have 1 vote for the Los Angeles Dodgers. In that situation, we do have a tie. There's no other votes that have come in, and since I have to break the tie, I can either change my vote or I can keep my vote the same. In this circumstance, I'm going to change my original vote from the Los Angeles Dodgers, and we're going to go Detroit, and we're going to have Detroit winning that game on March 29th. The last game for March 29th will be Oakland versus Seattle. Oakland versus Seattle. Who do we have? What say y'all in YouTube land? Oakland or Seattle? Okay, I have 2 votes for Oakland over Seattle. Since nobody else is voting, we're going to go Oakland. That is the last of the games for March 29th. There's not as many games on March 30th, but when we do these live streams, we're going to cover both Saturday and Sunday since baseball, a lot of people like to go and watch baseball on the weekends, especially when the weather has warmed up a little bit. Some parts of the country it already has warmed up. Some are still shivering and trying to figure out how to stay warm. Anyway, for March 30th, we have Milwaukee playing the New York Yankees. Milwaukee or the New York Yankees on March 30th. Milwaukee or New York Yankees, who do we have? Okay, I have 1 vote for Milwaukee. I have 1 vote for the New York Yankees. Again, in this situation, we have a situation to where there is a tie since nobody else is casting a vote. I can either choose to stay with my original vote or I can change my vote. You're probably right. Well, I appreciate your comments on my handwriting, and, that's not really what matters, but thank you anyway for letting me know. I do appreciate your thoughts on that. So anyway, I'm going to keep my vote the same, and we're going to go New York Yankees. Next game we have will be Philadelphia versus Washington. Philadelphia versus Washington. I do thank you for joining me, Dakota, but commenting on one's handwriting is not really a cool thing to do. So some people have better handwriting than others. Anyway, Philadelphia or Washington? Hello, Pulon. How are you? What we're doing right now is we're looking at Major League Baseball games that are taking place over the weekend between March 29th and March 30th of 2025. We just went over the games on March 29th, And so what we're going to do right now is we're looking at the games that who's playing, and despite on whether or not we know anything or not about these teams, we're casting a vote on who we think will win the game, and we're just making picks on that as a community thing. Oh, I know. I'm not worried about the troll. And I don't play football. I have played flag football. I do football-related live streams during football season, but this is baseball we're talking about right now. But no, I mean, I have played flag football, but I don't play regular football, but I have great respect for it. And I devote a lot of time and energy covering football things in the fall. And sometimes in sports updates if I happen to get information regarding that. So, well, that's very cool. You're saying football, you mean soccer, right? And congratulations on the 10 goals in football. When I was talking about football, I do American football. I don't necessarily cover the other football, but if there's enough of an interest, I might see about covering some of that in sports action videos separate from this. So anyway, moving on from that, we need to make a pick between Philadelphia or Washington. Who do we have winning this game? Philadelphia or Washington? Philadelphia or Washington? Who do we have to win this game? I have one vote for Philadelphia. I have 2 votes for Philadelphia. Anybody else wish to cast a vote in who they think will win the Major League Baseball game, Philadelphia or Washington? All right, nobody else is voting, so we're going to go Philadelphia. And again, to each and every one of you that has joined me for this live stream, I do greatly appreciate it. Okay, so I have a unanimous vote for Philadelphia. All right, moving on to the next Major League Baseball game for March 30th, we have Baltimore or Toronto. Baltimore or Toronto? Who do y'all say in YouTube land? Baltimore or Toronto? Yeah, I know it's a tough call. I have one vote for Baltimore. Pulling, it does not matter if you know anything about the teams or not. I mean, if you really don't know, just make a guess on who you think will win, and whichever team gets the most votes, that's who we go with. And this is a community voting effort. So again, it does not matter if you know anything about the teams or not. And if you really don't know, you could flip a coin and figure that out, because I've had to do that before when I've made picks before. So I understand. So I have 2 votes for Baltimore, 3 votes for Baltimore. We're going to go Baltimore. All right. Next game is Colorado versus Tampa Bay. Colorado or Tampa Bay, who do we have? Okay, I have 1 vote for Colorado. I have 2 votes for Colorado. I have 3 votes for Colorado, and Colorado is who we're going to have. The teams that you see that are underlined, those are the teams that we have in winning the games. So that just to let you know. Next game we have will be Pittsburgh versus Miami. Pittsburgh or Miami, who do we have? That's a tough one even for me. So in this game, I'm going to go ahead and cast my vote. Okay, I have 1 vote for Miami over Pittsburgh. I have 1 vote for Pittsburgh. Julian, Pulian, you get to cast a deciding vote since we've got 1-1. So who do you go with, Pittsburgh or Miami? And we've got 2 votes for Miami and 1 vote for Pittsburgh. So you broke the tie. We will go with Miami. All right, the next game we have is San Francisco versus Cincinnati. San Francisco or Cincinnati? Who do we have winning the game on March 30th? Okay. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. San Francisco or Cincinnati. Who do we have winning the Major League Baseball game? Even though earlier in the broadcast I mentioned that we would only use the first name of the teams unless there was multiple teams in the city, San Francisco is known as the Giants and Cincinnati is known as the Reds. So San Francisco or Cincinnati, and I have one vote for Cincinnati. Sorry, I didn't mean to where you couldn't hear me. I do apologize for that. I've got one vote for Cincinnati. I've got two votes for Cincinnati, and I've got one vote for San Francisco. So in that situation, the majority has the vote on that, and we will go with Cincinnati over San Francisco since they did get the majority of the votes. Next game we will look at today is the Los Angeles Angels versus the Chicago White Sox. Los Angeles Angels or the Chicago White Sox. Who do we have winning that game? Okay, I have one game for Los Angeles. One vote for Los Angeles. I have two votes for Los Angeles, and I have three votes for Los Angeles. Yeah, let's hope Angels in the outfield show up, like it showed up in the movie. So we'll see if they show up in the outfield in that game. Anyway, the next game we have will be Cleveland versus Kansas City. Cleveland or Kansas City, who do we have? Cleveland or Kansas City? I have one vote for Kansas City. I have one vote for Cleveland. Okay, we have two votes for Cleveland and one for Kansas City. So Cleveland with two votes and Kansas City with one. Cleveland gets the vote and gets the pick for that. Next game we have will be Minnesota versus St. Louis. Minnesota or St. Louis? Okay, I have one vote for St. Louis. I have one vote for Minnesota. So I get to cast a deciding vote since we have one for Minnesota and one for St. Louis, and I'm going Minnesota. So 2 votes to 1. Minnesota will have that one. Next game we have will be Boston versus Texas. Boston or Texas, who do we have? Okay, I have one vote for Boston. And I have one vote for Texas. In this situation, we have a tie, and I have not cast my vote yet. I'm going to go Texas. I think the Rangers actually have a shot at this one on this day. So Texas with 2 votes, Boston with 1. We go with Texas. Next game we have is the Chicago Cubs versus Arizona. Chicago Cubs or Arizona? Hey, it's okay. Sometimes, when it comes to the votes and stuff, no worries. It's all good. And again, this is the voting thing. Whichever one gets the most votes, that's the team we go with, even if we don't agree. So I have 2 votes for Arizona, and I have 1 vote for the Chicago Cubs, which would be mine. In this situation, the majority rules and stuff, Arizona with 2 votes, Chicago with 1. Arizona is who we will go with in winning this game. The next game we have is Oakland versus Seattle. Oakland or Seattle? Who do we have? Okay, I have 1 vote for Oakland. One vote for Oakland, 2 votes for Oakland, 3 votes for Oakland. You got a unanimous consent on that one, so 3 votes to 0. Oakland is who we will have to win that one. All right, the last game we're going to look at today in this Major League Baseball thing that we're doing, Atlanta or San Diego. Atlanta versus San Diego. Who do we have winning this one? Atlanta or San Diego, who do we have? I have 1 for Atlanta. I have 2 votes for Atlanta. And I have 1 vote for San Diego. So in this situation, the majority rules. 2 votes for Atlanta, 1 vote for San Diego. Atlanta is who we have. Now, as a quick review of our baseball picks, Milwaukee playing New York. We have this is for March 29th, the review. On March 29th, in the game Milwaukee versus New York Yankees, we went New York Yankees. In the game, the Los Angeles Angels versus the Chicago White Sox, we went to Chicago White Sox. In the game Minnesota versus St. Louis, we went Minnesota. In the game Baltimore versus Toronto, we went Baltimore. In the game Philadelphia versus Washington, we went Philadelphia. In the game Colorado versus Tampa Bay, we went Tampa Bay. In the game Pittsburgh versus Miami, we went Pittsburgh. In the game San Francisco versus Cincinnati, we went Cincinnati. In the game Cleveland versus Kansas City, we went Kansas City. Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry. Can you hear me? All right, I'm sorry about the audio issues. I'll fix that for later. We have in the Boston versus Texas game, we have we got Texas on that one. In the New York, the New York Mets versus Houston, we have Houston winning that one. All right, in the game Arizona versus San Diego, Atlanta versus San Diego, not Arizona, but Atlanta versus San Diego, we went Atlanta. In the Chicago Cubs game versus Arizona, we went Arizona. In the Detroit versus Los Angeles Dodgers game, we went Detroit. In the Oakland game versus Seattle, we went Oakland. On March 30th, the games on March 30th, Milwaukee versus the New York Yankees, we went the New York Yankees. In the game Philadelphia versus Washington, we went Philadelphia. In the game Baltimore versus Toronto, we went Baltimore. In the game Colorado versus Tampa Bay, we went Colorado. Oh, I don't know about the fact on why there's a bug, but I'll figure it out and we'll get it fixed for next time. In the game Pittsburgh versus Miami, we went Miami. In the game San Francisco versus Cincinnati, we went Cincinnati. In the game Los Angeles Angels versus Chicago White Sox, we went with the Los Angeles Angels. In the game Cleveland versus Kansas City, we went Cleveland. In the game Minnesota versus St. Louis, we went St. Louis. In the game Boston versus Texas, we went Texas. In the game Chicago Cubs versus Arizona, we went Arizona. In the game Oakland versus Seattle, we went Oakland. And in the game Atlanta versus San Diego, we went Atlanta. So there you have it, the review of our games we have picked. We have made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. We've made 27 picks over the course of the 2 days. So of those 27 games, next week, I'll let you know how we did in our picking for that. So I'll mention how many games we got right, how many games we got wrong, and then we'll move forward with whoever we'll be playing on the next week. This live stream regarding Major League Baseball will take place on Mondays, and it will be once a week from now through at least the end of August of 2025. It's at least what the plan is. Anyway, any questions, comments, concerns? I'm not ending just yet. I will be ending shortly, though. If you'd like to, please subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. The quickest way to do that is to go to www.youtube.com, the slash symbol, the at symbol, SPORTSLOV, or you can go on the YouTube search tab and type in Bob Amin in the search tab, and you'll know it's me because I have Sports Love Media burned into a basketball as my avatar. I'm also on Twitter X. My handle is at BobAmin16. That is the at symbol, BOBAMIN 16. If you will, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the notification bell so you'll be made aware when I'm doing these live streams, when I have sports action videos, when I have sports education videos, when I broadcast live, or when I have breaking news in the sports world. And I appreciate that very much, Poolin. I greatly appreciate your subscribing. Some things that also help too is hitting the like button, commenting as you're doing in the chat, commenting on other things that show up, and just anything you can to engage with the channel. It greatly helps in all forms and ways. So, yes, I know time is running short. So, anyway, thank you very much for joining me today. I do appreciate it very much. If anybody else has any questions or comments, if not, then this live stream will be ending. I'm Bob Amin signing out. Thank you and have a wonderful day. See you next time.